Good morrow and good morning, everyone. It is an absolute pleasure, as always, to be back with you. More importantly, to be back in the studio. And if you take a look around, you'd notice the magnanimous, the mysterious, and the most magical SolMagick has braved once again the smoky den of iniquity. Welcome, Sol. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, no problem. I'm always happy to be here. We have these great conversations, and I learn a lot, and I'm looking forward to it again.
Today, what we are talking about is going over and into the realms of magical protections to shield and guard the self and physicality and mentality, and through the use of spirituality into the unique depths of the psyche and self. Especially as we come into the witching hour, Samhain or Halloween, to you muggles and mortals, is soon upon us. And this is a time by which our culture and the collective unconscious that we're a part of, to be honest, really believes and causes some spooky shit to happen. And being aware of it and being aware of how these changes can affect you, what you may need to do to guard or protect yourself in the witching hour on this spooky evening is why we're here today. So the first question to pass off to you today is, what things do we need to protect ourselves from on a magical level?
Ooh, everything,
Fantastic
everything.
answer.
And I say that because we live from a perspective of like we're differentiated, right? We have an individuality that we have. We perceive ourselves to be separate from one another, when in reality is really undifferentiated. And so energy has a tendency to want to connect with other energy, not necessarily for something malicious, though it can be. And so when it comes to protections, what we're doing is, especially within the realm of magic, particularly we're focusing our energy. They say it today as I call all of my power back to me. It's how they're wording it now, but that's essentially what you're doing. If you're doing magic, you have a purpose, and why you're doing the magic, you're working
Mm-hmm.
towards a goal. And as you work towards that goal, it's important that you have as much of your faculties pointed on that. And so, they have a saying. Um, they have a saying when I was growing up. Um, Say it be you and your friend, y'all hanging out in a group, and then all of a sudden one of your friends is acting a little differently. And you notice that he's acting more like the girl that he recently started dating. He's acting a lot like her. We used to say, she on you. You know what I mean? And the
Okay.
implication is her energy is on you. And so, of course, we're protecting ourselves from thought forms at the very least of how people perceive us, because sometimes we conform based on what we think people want us to be. And so again, in magic, you have to be your authentic self in order for it to be effective at all.
I really like that, especially there at the end. So again, those who are watching, take out your quills and write that little secret down. When we've talked, especially referencing back to some of our other wonderful episodes, we've talked a lot about the views of the world and how it's inherently good and it's seeking to cause good. But likewise, you previously stated, and in Hermeticism, we're all a part of this. We're this collective energy by which me and you, we're not the same, but we're a part of the same thing as it is.
Mhm.
And in that space, the delineation of the lines to protect me from you, or me from the idea of another and their thought forms. How is it that somebody else's thoughts can make their way into affecting me? Especially if let's say that I don't know them. I have no idea that they're there, but they're a magical practitioner. They've done their hex, their vex. How is it that that can even affect me if I have no idea of it?
The same way that the wind can affect you, the same way you can go outside and a gust of wind knock you down, the same way. Um, if we want to get into what they say, it goes to like the law of sympathy. Sympathetic magic is some of the earliest forms of folk magic.
Yeah.
Uh, and so I can even contribute a story. I have a cousin who was going through some things with his wife, and as he was going through them, he later told me in a conversation that whenever they hugged, he would say a prayer, not like out loud audibly. She was totally unaware. She's totally unaware. He's doing it in here. And then, as a scientist, I'm observing over the course of time, and then all of a sudden, everything in their relationship just seemed to magically all start working perfectly. That
Hmm.
is is the sympathetic, the sympathetic sheet, the sympathy, you know, the
Right.
most
So okay.
thing is the sympathy of the thing, because you can exude. My mentor used to say that if he was sad in a room, everybody was sad in the room, because you can exude your version of reality, as it were, on a higher frequency than somebody who's just drifting through life and don't know where they're going. Your signal,
Absolutely to that. Talk about magical responsibility.
yeah. And so you can tune in, and just if you take a room of people in general, you can kind of hone in and see who's running the room just based on how they're standing and what they're doing. Is all of these things, like Karis once says, being an MC, he said, this is a part of it. This is how I conduct the crowd. All of this is moving energy, and we can intelligently decide how we want that energy to interact with the ether around us or the environment around us. They call it the rhetorical situation. The seven liberal arts and sciences is fundamentally magic. Fundamentally.
Okay, facts, straight fucking facts. That one in particular, when you look at what is a system of base understanding of the world around you, and it has to be a system that is formed in and by the world around you, not by the perceivers of it. And those seven liberal arts and sciences, especially the order of operation, the order that they
Hmm.
come in and that they're placed in,
Mm-hmm.
it's hypercritical. It is deeply rooted in massive mysticism, in massive, especially because when you consider that the fellowcraft, I'm sorry, back into masonry as it goes. When you consider that the fellowcraft was initially, that was the last degree. That those were the two primary teachings which were instructed in the ancient build guilds. It was you were a beginner, and then you're going to come through and understand how to form and formulate that craft. The master mason was added later.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that idea, it's like the secret of a lot of the personal application to individual growth based in how you see the world and how it can be applied in the right order is what that was the secret. That was
Mm-hmm.
the power. That was the strength.
Yeah, yeah. Especially during a time when um, education wasn't as widespread as it was, or as it is now, I should say. Like we talked before, how having a liberal arts degree isn't necessarily a big thing today.
Yeah.
You can go online and go to, what is it, the University of the People, which is free, and then pay $100 to take your exams. I mean, a degree is basically free now. You
Oh
know.
shit. See, I didn't even know that. I need to add the University of the People. That's going on my scratch pad.
Yeah,
What?
and they're fully accredited. It's
No
really
shit.
amazing. I was a student for a little while until I realized I didn't want to be a computer programmer, because they have a you have to look at their curriculum, because I'm not sure, and of course I don't get reimbursed by them for any of this, but
Yeah.
uh, it's my experience is that they have, of course, I was focused on the IT curriculum, but I think they have education, they have other as well, business, and what's the gymnast's name? The young lady that is supposed that's like the greatest gymnast of all time. They saying, um, is it
Talking
Simone?
to a very uninformed motherfucker. I have no idea.
Yeah, I think it's Simone Biles. I think she got her degree from there, because she did a sponsorship with them. But at any rate, yeah, a degree is basically free, and
That's
so
freaking cool. I had no idea about that. Sorry.
but at the time Freemasonry was coming onto the scene again during the period of enlightenment, after being in the ecclesiastically ordained darkness, um, around 1715, when the Enlightenment group started coming out and encouraging people to read and to actually observe nature around you. Um, this was a big thing, you know. To be a Freemason was, in effect, to be collegiate. you know.
It really was, and in fact, especially when you consider the a little bit later down the road, the operative years, where those bodies of education, where the minds began to meet, and what those meeting minds did, and how the magic, the actual action and transformative change, which the entire face of the world grew from out of that, the meeting of minds bound in
Hmm.
effectively a universalism, which is really interesting to consider it.
Hmm.
Now, I want to go back a bit. When we talked a little bit around how this can affect me, or how somebody else's thoughts can affect me. I
Hmm.
followed the analogy, and I really like, it's the wind. Okay, so I understand the wind. How and or what do I do to keep from getting blown the fuck down? Okay, I know that this thing is there. I know. I look outside. I see the storms. I see the clouds. I see the things.
Hmm.
What can I do if I still have? I mean, inevitably, if I have to go out, I have to be there beside it with it. How do I move through that or move unmoved by it?
Well, you put your coat on. You put your coat on, your galoshes or whatever. You suit up. What they call in the Christian world, you put on the full armor of Christ. Um, uh, a moment ago, when you're speaking about the operative, and then we started talking about how the various meanings begin to evolve in Freemasonry, that hit it right on the spot because of the alchemists that came and infiltrated the various guild system during the persecution by the church. They were able to hide in the various stone guilds, and then they were able to pass their teachings through the symbolism of the tools that they used every day. So, in that way, Freemasonry came down to us in the present time, unscathed by the church. Now,
I like that.
the idea, again, is the alchemists, right? The alchemists were Hermetics. These were Hermetic people who believed in and demonstrated the seven laws, for lack of a better word, the seven principles. The
Yeah.
all is mind, the law of gender, the law of polarity, the law of rhythm. You know, law of cause and effect. Um, I'm missing some, but
Vibration
yeah, the law,
and shit.
particularly particularly the law of vibration, because that's how someone can infect you. So again, it goes to what is it that you want? Because magic, again, you're working towards a goal. So what is your goal that you're focused on? Now,
Okay.
you have that locked in. You have that locked in now, and you need to begin fortifying your thoughts. And you have to start with how you think of yourself, right? And no matter what ritual a person does, even though I am partial to one, um, these rituals are nothing more than powerful affirmations to the mind, because our mind is much more powerful than we give it credit for. It is what does the magic. you know,
Have you ever heard of the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram?
that's my favorite. Yes, that's my favorite.
I was there was a similarly one of my favorites. To further the spooky line of correlation at times between the two of us, but no, the LBRP in particular, when you talk about that, like one in particular, I was like, well, that would be the LBRP for me, and it had a massive effect on me as an infant witch, an infant practitioner.
Hmm. Hmm. I think when anyone becomes a practitioner and realizes, especially when you develop along certain lines, when you read about, like, for example, the Golden Dawn itself, and you know how Dion Fortune ended up branching off, and then her and Morna Mathers had like this big thing, this big psychic war, and then when you read about, you know, the most famous to me is the one between H.P. Blavatsky and um, Pascal Beverly Randolph. They had they had a war, right? They had a war. They were rivals, and long story short, as we know historically, Randolph is said to have killed himself. I got newspaper clippings from the day he committed suicide. Um,
Really?
yeah, newspaper clip what on newspapers.com. And apparently the day before he was walking around town looking for his wife, and he ran into some neighbors because it was it was reported like all over the country. Not just where he was in Ohio. And I was like, this guy was something major, during his day. But anyway,
Yeah.
and all of them told the story of that some of the neighbors found him walking around saying that, well, tell my wife I'm going to go home and kill myself now. And they thought he was just joking and lying or whatever. They didn't think
What?
much about it. And that's what he did. He went home and killed himself. But interestingly, in the book about Pascal, there's a couple of chapters. That, I'm sorry, I keep a stack of books right here. Yep, I got it. So I don't know if you can see this. This is the book,
Yeah.
right? So there's a few chapters dedicated, and this is Pascal Beverly Randolph by John Patrick Deviney. Deviney, if anybody wanted to get it, but there's a few chapters dedicated to him and H.P. Blavatsky's relationship. And when I say relationship, I don't mean that they were romantically engaged, because it doesn't seem that they were, but she is painted as having been very jealous of Pascal's abilities. But at the time of his death, in the book, it says at the time of his death, she was like in India. Her and her sidekick, they were in India. And her sidekick reports that she came out of a trance and jumped up and said at various times that he was shooting at her in the astral realm. And then when Pascal died, you match up the timelines with the newspapers and then what the account of her friend said. At the time Pascal died, she jumped up out of her trance to say, I got him. She's all the way in India.
Holy shit.
She's all the way in India. She didn't have a way of knowing that he had been shot and killed tangibly, only that in her mind she had.
That was, that had been the manifested form. Holy shit.
So that's a prime example of, where you could reasonably conclude that, when we talk about magic and when we talk about like the law of vibration, this isn't merely metaphysical thinking. This is tangible, it would seem, you know.
Well, I mean, evidence.
Yeah.
We're scholars, we're scientists in this. We're about observing it, testing it, and seeing how it practically rolls down the hill, so to speak. And I think evidence goes to show that, if nothing else, right, on an intangible level, there is a relationship
Mm-hmm.
between mentality, the realm of your mind, and the things that you perceive and you think, and the
Mm-hmm.
physicality by which they, is feeding into that, and vice versa, that loop of perception and stimuli going back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about, you talked to again, you put on your galoshes and your jacket. Well, what happens when, it's a gunfight, right? How do I take this rain jacket, which, LVRP, this could be me casting my circle. I could be just thinking positively or focusing on the beneficial. How do I turn this into the Kevlar jacket? Or how, likewise, when that war may be going on,
Mm-hmm.
how do I recognize when I need to, up my game?
Well, hold on, let me move these books.
That's it.
So,
I saw you disappear. I was like, oh, there's another book.
so it to me it looks like I really, I think I really have a simplistic view of magic. Like in the metaphor of how do I go from raincoat to Kevlar would be in real life for me is similar to like if I was in a lucid dream. If I realize based on the environment, I just, I literally just, I just think it.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it, and it is, and the it isness. That's not what it wasn't a word before. The isness of it. I'm using all this to be. It's
It is.
hardly an chaos.
We need it. We got to make up words. The other 600,000 don't work.
Yeah, and so it's just a matter of understanding where you are in relation to where you're going, what's happening around you, and so I was brought up on the idea of banish constantly, constantly, all the time. Be it the lesser banishing ritual or simple laughter. And then I always wondered, how could the lesser banishing ritual and laughter is more powerful.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah.
Genuine laughter, genuine laughter is more powerful than anything else. Than anything else. And it changes the vibration totally. If strictly from just in our own mind, you know, you could perceive yourself under attack and not be that could be the attack. But I digress. And simply laughing, being able to laugh, it is a big self defense thing. You know, it's big magical self defense. And then of course the lesser banishing ritual. I'm working on a couple of others that came across my they don't call it timeline on TikTok. They call it feed.
For FYP, your for you page.
Came across my for you page, and but the lesser banishing one, that's the one that is just second nature for me. I can.
I know exactly what you mean. Now, okay, how did you find that? And then likewise, what now, do you use the Greek or the Hebrew? I would assume, based on some of our other conversations, probably incorrectly, but that you would use the Hebrew pronunciations. But I've seen a lot of done with Greek and another one.
Yeah, yeah. I use the I guess the Hebrew pronunciations, and I use air quotes because Hebrew is a conundrum. Apparently, it's just not a monolithic. It's not a monolithic thing, you know. But I use the Hebrew pronunciations. At some point, I would like to understand the fullness of what's being encapsulated in the names that are being intoned, and then switch them out for other names. From, but you know, I don't know how that will work. I'll let you know if
Hey,
I.
I was about to say, I mean, yeah, let's there's a scientific magical experiment to do. Let's just swap them out. I mean, on inevitability, a lot of things, even cultures and faiths, have done similar practices. We talked about that in one of our last ones in regards to even like, some of the Haitian faiths, uh, not just Haitian faiths, but the folk faiths, those which that have continued the way that those energies have just persisted. There is a thing that fits, and then there's sometimes things that it gets shoved into.
Yeah, yeah, true, true.
Okay, so into the realm of magical protection, let's talk a personal experience. How do, or not, yeah, what is something that you have used to personally signify something that you need to draw your attention back to your magical protections or back to that mindfulness? Because it's easy sometimes to not realize you're fighting a war or a part of a battle when you're caught in the mortal realm, the earthly realm, because you're manifested by distractions, as it goes.
Yeah.
How do I know where I'm at sometimes?
Your mood, how you feel. If you get out of bed in the morning, and I don't mean like necessarily your health, but even though that's an indication, that's just an out picturing of what's going on internally. But if your mood is such that you know you're have some anger, or you know you're snapping at people, or you feel maybe depressed, or you might feel sad, or you know anything other than joy, it's a time to you know assess and calibrate yourself, because at the end of the day the magic comes through this thing that we're in, you know, so you have to calibrate it. And a part of the calibration is your mood, a mood assessment. If your mood is such that you're sad first thing in the morning and you don't really know why, you just are, banish. It's time to banish. You know,
Okay.
there's a story of a guy, and I don't recall his name, but he was diagnosed with like fourth stage. I want to say cancer. I forget which type of cancer. Now that if I analyze that with a magical kind of mind, it looked like something happened to him because he appeared perfectly healthy up to a certain point. Then bam, he had this fourth stage cancer.
That would definitely be a slight indication.
Yeah, and so he ended up beating it, and he beat it by filling his days watching nothing but humorous movies that made him laugh loud from the bottom of his belly.
All right.
No
Again, to the
chemo,
power of laughter.
no chemo, just laughing. laughing. That should be on Google. That was a noteworthy story. I forgot what book I read it in, but I would imagine that that would be something that somebody could find on Google.
Let's
Yeah,
go and give a Google to the power of laughter.
yeah,
I think no, that's interesting. You talked about that because the laughter is one of the most effectively it's more powerful, if not the one of the most powerful forms of banishment.
yeah.
And it's because I've seen laughter and crying, both of these physical responses, as exemplifications of effectively pure, I don't know, almost pure ecstasy. Effectively, like when you reach that state, be it sadness, joy, like all of them, like though they're singular points, they're poles. When we talk about Hermeticism, everything is bound, by poles.
Mm-hmm.
And poles inevitably are just extremes of the same thing, this dual form. And sadness, or so not sadness, crying and laughter seem like poles of this physical expression of this, especially when it's real. Because I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I've cried because I was happy. I've cried because I was sad. I've definitely, and likewise, I've cried when I was angry, like just, but likewise, I've laughed during all of the same.
Mm-hmm.
And I can definitely say that when I'm there, I'm not here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Buddha. I don't know. It's a different state.
Yeah, yeah. Now it does look like it might have muted again, but I think you meant to stop there anyway, so that's cool.
I'll take it. I'll take it. Shit.
Yeah, and what was the odds that that would synchronistically happen? And it muted again, by the way. But now
Nonsense. Nonsense.
in terms of laughing and crying, and we often see them paired together. And I think in the collective mind, we understand to a certain degree. Even when everyone knows the crying mask, so the crying mask and the laughing mask, they kind of go together. Um, I only have a theory, and I do think they're apart. They're the same coin. I do agree, and I think what they do, just when I analyze it, when I have a good hearty laugh or a good hearty cry, what they have in common for me is that the mind goes blank. There's no dialogue.
Okay.
And in my personal philosophy, I often say zero is greater than one. Zero is the space that the
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
fills.
No, I love the shit out of that.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's like a hard reset on the phone. So on your phone, you we can oscillate up and down through all of these different modes, but laughing or crying will actually take you into the reset, the next level, which I believe the is what the Hindus call where the Sahasrara chakra is, where there's silence, there's no words, everything is almost telepathic or your empathy. If it's crying, your empathy, you understand everything about the planet, people around you. Is a certain amount of vulnerability that you're now just putting out into the world, right? And laughing has it kind of inverse to that, but they both tap into blanking the mind. And then from there, we have the option of continuing laughing, continuing crying, or whatever state we want to leap to. Because once you hit zero, you can come straight back into another state.
Everything emanates from zero. From the point where, if you consider, yeah, no, 100%.
You just gotta know where you at a given time. You know.
So, there's kind of been this running theme in our courses, and for those who watch, and likewise to anyone, to us, I've noticed that, magic is remarkably simple, especially in discussion in certain spaces. What's encapsulated in the power of shifting vibrational levels from upper down lower can be done through these experiences which encapsulate laughter or crime or that mindlessness, almost that state where your mind is mute and you cross into that place of genuine true experience. I mean, you just gave me a stargate. That's incredible, especially when you talk about mastering, like empathy is something that gets all of us. We can be fed in by stimuli and have empathetic or sympathetic responses, but to control that and to take it to a degree where you're using how you feel to guide you into a state of Zen, of Buddha, of peace, of pure, just chuckling. I mean, everybody's been to the point in time where you're like, you feel like you're about to bust a gut, you're not making sound, your abs are just tightened, and you're like, it hurts, but the best hurt that it could possibly be. I mean, That is definitely a state that I would love to be in, and I consider when I find myself lost in others. That's, I mean, that's the secret. That's magic.
Indeed, it is. Indeed, it is. And but I think the idea that we have to bear in mind is that we have to emerge from that state, and so we have an opportunity to decide how we're going to emerge from that state. At some point, because of the polarity, you're going to stop laughing. At some point, you're going to stop crying. So when you come out of either of
Sure.
those states, what state do you want to be in? And I find with laughter or joy, it's easier to decide. It's something very magnetic for me individually, and it might be because I'm a Taurus, it might be whatever. But sadness, I don't want to say that sadness is evil. Like, of course, it's not evil to be sad, but sadness has a certain pull to it that I find dangerous. I
No,
find it.
and I definitely agree, and I think it's unfortunate that people oftentimes travel to sadness, or they travel to the experience of crying
Mhm.
by sadness,
Yeah.
because that there's definitely moments. I mean, like I've laughed myself to tears,
Mhm.
and likewise, I've been so depressed. Inevitably, laughter was the that sensation which rooted and lifted me up. But one's definitely, you talk about masculine and feminine, positive and negative, high vibrational, low vibrational.
Mhm.
There's a unique state to each, and those who exist within one and the other.
Yeah, definitely. And again, this all goes back into, you know, why we would need protection. Because innately, we're going to do the magic. We're really doing the magic on ourselves. People say, "Can you do a spell on somebody for me?" No, I'm working on me now. I'm working on me.
Well said.
and and the vibration, if you would, that you choose to go into is very important, which is why protections are important. Oftentimes, if you are under an attack of some sort, this goes back to the idea of calibration. I think you asked earlier, how did I come to the lesser banishing ritual? And to go into your idea that magic is incredibly simple. As kids, we didn't put all of this kind of thought into magic. It was just magic was just a fact when I was a kid, and
Yeah.
then all of a sudden people started saying, you know, that stuff isn't real. All of a sudden you had to adopt all of these new beliefs to be considered a grown up or maturing. So you had to put those beliefs down. But when we was kids, magic was real. it was
Yeah, no, I mean,
real.
big city facts.
So it's very simple. And what happened with me when I got into magic and started realizing what was going on, that it was a school of magic I was in. Again, I was living in Trinidad and Tobago, and I, I was studying with the 12 tribes of Israel, Rastafarian sect. They were in the headquarters was in Blue Range, Diego Martin. So I used to go there every day because it was like 6 months before I could actually get a job there. And so, long story short, my mentor, he often talked about the powers that people have, and I didn't really think much about it, but he recommended that I read the Bible every day, a particular Bible, the Schofield Study Bible, and to get a Metaphysical Bible Dictionary by Charles Fillmore, and that radically changed how I perceive biblical scriptures, like and the abilities of man in general. And then things just started happening, whereby the things that I knew as a kid were being validated now by this new experience that I was having. And then what happens, we end up, what happened to me is that I wanted to know more about what people had to say about magic, right? And so I ended up, I think I said this before, that no one should ever start with Aleister Crowley, but he was the most prolific. And so that's where I kind of started with Western magic. It was Crowley.
It's funny how that shit goes. And I swear, on some level, an aspect of his practice has to be and have an effect on that. Like the dude had enough magnetism, enough gravity around him that he, like you and myself, like many, was the first individual his writings, his teachings, when the people got their hands on. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, it was definitely the most readily accessible. just because of, I guess, the infamy that surrounded his name. Um, if the more infamy you have, which I think, I hate to give this man a compliment, but I do think
He's gonna do
that
it.
that was a part of his brilliance because he was just so outlandish. Like if you read in the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene, there's a whole section dedicated to making a spectacle, and he mastered that in public in what was it, Victorian or Elizabethan
I
England.
mean, yeah.
So his work was still really pumping really bad towards um, the end of the century. So it was, his name was more known. And so as I started to study him as a person, of course I came to learn about the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and H.P. Blavatsky, all the people I want to say are like pioneers of the modern magic movement that we have today.
Yeah.
Um, all of those people, and then when I saw what happened with him and the Golden Dawn, I was like, "Whoa, he tripping!" I was like,
Shit.
"Whoa,
Shit.
he tripping! What the hell?" And so I kind of stayed on. Now I'm still a big fan of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, like a huge fan. Like I wish I could get a charter so that I got. It's so many brothers in Atlanta that would love to start one here. You know what I mean? I have a large building. We could do
I'm
music,
like, shit. I'm like, I got a spot.
but it seems to be a very hard thing to do, to get a charter. Um, you could just start one, but I'm particular
I'm
to
like,
the current that Regardi had. I would like to start something in that current. But I digress. I stayed there and learned about the lesser banishing ritual. The different knowledge lectures. Which when I heard knowledge lecture, I grew up exposed to the five percenters. So knowledge lectures were okay. What y'all talking about? Like, and then next thing I knew, lesser banishing ritual became second nature. That's just, I learned something new yesterday about people crossing themselves with the pentagram, and I thought that was very interesting because I didn't know people used to do that.
really? So like
Yeah,
when you say people go, like pagans or or was this like
yeah, yeah, like pagans, like that, like from what I understand, pagans wore the pentacle and the pentagram, but more particularly the pentacle, um, as reverently as Christians wore their crosses. you know. And so, everyone knows the Christian crossing, but there's also one for the pentagram, and I was just like blown away. Like, really? This, you know?
see now I see I've got to go give because see I need to do some research on that because it's funny how like how long you could consider yourself pagan and have no idea about some of the history involved. My brother oftentimes said that is like being pagan or even being involved with paganism is like being one letter in one word in one paragraph in a chapter that nobody knows when it started or ended. And I'm
I
like,
like where that went.
all right, that's so fair because so many people, I mean, they meet on this wide ass fucking road of paganism, of just not Christianity on certain spaces. I mean, that's it's not fair in all cases, but it is in others. And
It is
it's
a
like I feel like any and inevitably, so this is what I think is kind of the beauty to Christianity. And here's why I give them props. It funnels are very important. You have to drive people to understand and to ask questions. And some of the easiest ways to make people ask questions is put them in a closed box, put them in a place where suddenly the light starts to get a little dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. And inevitably, like the plant, it will seek out light. People will seek it out. And sometimes when you're out in an open field on a sunny day, you have no idea where to go because it's all bright, it's all light, and it's wonderful and magnanimous. But where you go from that state, where you go is, you're not challenged by the world around you. You are blind. You alone stand before all of the wind in the field, all of the heat, and you oftentimes can perish and pass. But to exist in the counter, to be able to have the purposeful winding vine allows you to take structure from those which have risen before you. The mighty trees are climbed by the winding vine. And in such, the vine climbs to the very same heights, but with a different ability. So it's talk about, magic. We talk about the places which we came from and how we get here today. It's
Mhm.
interesting to see the path. It's the paths that have been taken to get there.
Yeah, yeah, and it also highlights too the necessity for just to add on that also the necessity for magical protection because when we talk about I don't want to minimize it all. I was thinking about this on the drive home today. When we think about the Roman Catholic Church, we I do not want to give them any sort of credit of putting a great idea into a box and thereby challenging people, by putting it in this box. It might be some benefits derived, but here's the problem I have is that they exterminated other Christians who didn't believe as they believed. When we talk about paganism, particularly, we're talking about originally it being those village people
Fair.
or those civilians, i.e., not soldiers of Christ. But even though you might have had a system that dealt with Jesus in a particular way, it wasn't
Very
the
fair.
system they wanted, and they exterminated your whole village. Whole cultures wiped off the planet that had something valuable to say.
Now, I am not going to be anything other than devil's advocate in this situation because I don't stand for it. But I look at nature in the space where mutation, especially at the wide swath by which life occurs in so many different avenues and parallels.
Mhm.
Mutation is something which occurs on so many levels, just minute ones, and they are sometimes beautiful. They are sometimes the most captivating things, these little unique changes, these little unique lights hidden throughout these variances, which are based off of a commonality, but they're different.
Mhm.
Nature regularly provides and creates forces whereby evolution says which ones will continue and which ones will stop. And so when I look at aspects to how the conquest of Christianity
Mhm.
has been a catalyst for, and I'm not going to say positive because we know you can evolve in negative ways. Like evolution is not always it's not always up. You
Right.
can devolve.
Right.
I think there's a fair contribution to give for a de-evolution in our spiritual path. In the same way, you could look at the evolutions which may occur through the resistance to the changes. I mean, because I don't challenge that. There have been empires which have crushed whole systems of faith that led I mean society and culture to its heights. Even
Mhm.
in Atlantean days, I mean they were a warring society,
Sure
so
they did.
it tracks. I'm like this is like okay. So I wonder as to why is that oftentimes the path that we see, and because we talk about protections, what can we do as the little guy if we happen to be in the village versus part of the drill on its way to Bossing Say?
Well, let me just say, if in the evolution of this thought, in the devil's advocate thought is, um, from an objective view, nature evolves in a particular way and is often survival of the fittest. I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem with is that this institution denies that, particularly at that time. This institution talks about love and light and the good will of God. You know what I mean? So that doesn't, for me, that doesn't track. I would rather you tell me that you are a bloodthirsty organization that will kill like in the hood. You knew who the Bloods and the Crips was. You knew how to dress. You knew where to go and where not to go.
Be
These,
honest up front.
these people show up talking about, in the name of the good Lord Jesus and XYZ. You think it's all good until they get to asking you what you believe, and if it's not what they
Oh
believe,
shit.
it's a bad day.
A bad day. Well shit, I mean, and you're not wrong.
I would have more respect, and that's why I say that that in and of itself highlights the necessity of spiritual protection. You know what I mean? If you it like I'm very much into Sanskrit mantra. You know what I mean? Which I view as a form of magic as well. So if
100%.
I don't have nothing to do, physically or whatever, or if I'm doing something that doesn't necessarily require mine to be on it, I will be chanting a mantra, because that is a vibration, and we're going back to the whole law of vibration, to
Right.
counteract certain things. They're mantras for literally, and that's the reason why Buddha came. I don't want to get off track though, but because it was so many mantras that it was a
Okay.
problem
And
for.
let's look at that. Okay. So we, because we've
Yeah,
got these forces, they're there, they drive us, right? We have incarnations regularly, which show up to go, yo, fuckers, you are too distracted. Look forward, like, hey, just it's simple. Like, don't make it overcomplicated. Y'all have come up with so many rules. Let me remind you.
hmm
Two, love yourself, love your neighbor the same. Just I mean, and inevitably, when you talk about that, we've gone into conversations about the world and its view, and we talk about goodness and the innate stature of joy being a regular place by which we exist, and how that creates this ever-present aura of protection.
And bliss. I think you also mentioned bliss. That if you have time out of your day to get up and just sit for 15 minutes before everybody else gets up, before the sun gets up, you make it a regular thing. You will come into contact with bliss, and that.
I got literal chills. Like I don't, camera ain't gonna pick it up, but like I got actual chills running down the back of my neck and down my arms. Funny you say that, especially because like I started when we moved here to Colorado Springs. I recently, I took on a job working overnight, and so you talk about that moment. I love that moment. I live for that moment. I would fight to keep my shift in such a space because it allows me to have. And I'm like, my wife jokes. She's like, I'm so jealous sometimes that you spend 10 hours awake in the middle of the night without children, without. And don't get me wrong, I do too. I love it. This shit is my sanity. And I think about it in the peace of silence. I think I read a quote one time and I would almost get it tattooed because it has such power behind it. And it says, fear the soul by which longs for solitude. They are either a beast or a god. And I was like, oh, oh, G double damn Batman.
That's that. Yeah, yeah. Why didn't you get that? I'd be
Yeah,
definitely got that.
like, oh shit. Because even like when we go back to the very first lesson with soul here, it is about like, all right, here's a challenge for you bastards: is you're gonna sit still for 15 minutes. Just don't move any part of yourself. Just still, I'm better. I've done it once or twice now. But that was one of the first challenges, and it just emanates from existing within here. And by bringing that state of bliss. Now, when you first start, it's definitely not blissful. You just get really frustrated that you took his advice. But then you continue into it, and suddenly you'll find that your mind, just kind of like when you shake a jar, the heavy shit falls to the bottom and the lighter shit starts to settle. Organization occurs when you settle, when you stop shaking it up. And you got to stop to do that. This is lesson number one. We've progressed into 2, 3, and all of the others in this class and course today.
Indeed, indeed. And I think I've heard it put as silence and circumspection, where you're able to just, like you said, those things that you're able to things separate out, and you're able to to toss out what they call the dross or the dross, and you're left with the pureness of things. It is really something that I wouldn't even attempt to profane with language. It,
It's the root. To be honest, I think that's you could take any faith. They've got a name for this right. They've got a name for this act, this idea. In alchemy, you could say it's separate e coagula, to
mm-hmm.
separate and recombine, separate coarse from fine and recombine. This idea in Christianity, very much the same. In paganism, you can find the same roots, but you've got to be able to see it. And there's a reason there, but you can't do it unless you're aware of all of the processes to take that base thing through.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, exactly. And I think even that sitting for 15 minutes is a protection in and of itself. Um, because just my theory, that it reconnects you with the wholeness. I feel reconnected whole with everything, and it's not like I'm everywhere or anything, but like I found my place in the whole. I don't know if you ever watched Star Trek: The Next Generation, but there was this, or maybe it was Deep Space Nine. Yeah, I think it was Deep Space Nine. They had a creature on there, I think, called Mr. Odo, and when he went home, his people were like liquid, and he could take a humanoid form, but he would walk into the liquid and join back in, and they would commune that way, you know.
Oh shit, I remember what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, and they were whole, and that's kind of how I feel. Like I'm 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 in the wholeness of everything. Like I'm here, but it's not. There is no I. It's like
Yes,
we.
you captured it really well the way you said that, because you're not, because the people, they esoteric teachers and teachings oftentimes confuse, or people can get confused with it when you hear this space where it's like I am everything, right? But then it's not it. There you said it. It was I am a part of the whole. Like I know my part. I know my position, my order within it. There.
Right, right, right. And I say that's a protection because a lot of things, if someone is trying to attack you, they have these ideas like that you have to go off of your path. It's really like follow the yellow brick road kind of shit. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
the minute you get distracted and you're off your path, now you're vulnerable. Now you're vulnerable. And so finding your place and realigning with it and getting back on your road puts you back within the protections, because you can do all of these protection spells that people got out there, but if you're not single-mindedly going to where you're saying you're going, you're off your road, you're still going to fall victim because you're not doing the actions to support the magic.
Only protection I got is car insurance, but I'm on a boat. It
Right.
just doesn't work. It doesn't work. So what you described is something that when I became a parent, was it became my magic, and it became my truth, and that was the power and the protection of purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I know what I need to do in life, and on a very simple level, it's my children. It's dedicate and focus everything I have to all of them wherever I can, and in
Mm-hmm.
such a way that in the same way that all does for me. That is my purpose, and outside of that, I really don't need to worry about anything else, because is it that, does it serve that? No, then I don't necessarily need to worry about it, because it doesn't fall in line with my purpose, my place. Even in Freemasonry, there is power in order, and harmony, by which is created in the enforcement of that order. you know
Right.
Position, stations, and places have power, especially within ourselves, within our role, within the big macrocosm. So you're talking about that lovely secret, and that's the understanding your place within the whole can give you. It's like, I'm the best T cell that I need to be. I don't need to worry about what's going on over there, even if it may be beyond me. I
Mm-hmm.
need to exist. The Bhagavad Gita talks a lot about that. Yeah, I understand they don't suck. Like, this is your duty. Do it.
But I don't want to kill them though.
You think I gave you that bow to miss, motherfucker? Fire.
Man, the Bhagavad Gita, I love that book, and I originally read it because I was doing the and I don't want to even say it that way, because I still hold a lot of the teachings as not necessarily historically true, though there's evidence that people have to support that the battle actually happened. Um, but what I like it for is just it just was so real. Like Krishna just was not playing no games with Arjun.
Mm-mm.
He's like, look, I don't even care about their bodies, right? You getting caught up on bodies dying. And I was just
He's
like,
like, listen, we got bigger dicks to deal. So, and that okay, the relationship, because that's why on our podcast there's a whole we read just kind of like on the Emerald Tablets, we did an invoked reading of the Bhagavad Gita as it is, because now I'll be honest, don't ever do that And I mean, I say that because the minute you tell the world around you, like, all right, I want to record this, God. That was a hell of a message. I want to share it with people. The forces that be are gonna be like, all right, you ever done this before? That looks a little tight. You need some lube. And and then you're like, what you mean? And then suddenly you're just biting the pillow. It was the most, it took me months in between those readings because it was such a raw and brutal experience, and in the best. Like I came away like longing and lapping. There was an ecstasy which was present, but it's something that, like, you talk about the Bhagavad Gita, holy shit, the relationship as God, as a friend, right? Krishna
Right,
is pulling Arjuna.
right, right.
The idea of that in my head, and that God, Krishna would show that particular chapter. I think it's like 13, 11, or 13.
Mm-hmm.
And it's when uh, Arjuna gets to see the form of Krishna. He's like, he's like, you're talking a lot of shit, my friend. I understand you're a big guy, but like, really? And then he's like, bet. And just peels it back. And Arjuna's just like, turn it off. Turn it
It
off.
was too much.
Close the veil.
My ultimate form, son. Behold my glory.
And know that I am God. It is
Man,
amazing. There's just, and such a book that you come away with such a friendship. It was a friendship that felt like it was right here. You talk about bliss and
yeah.
joy. I touch that book. I think about that book. And funny enough, time in my life where I journeyed down to Amenti with the Emerald Tablets. I came back up and I had two books in my hand, and one of them was the Bhagavad Gita. The other was the Tibetan Book of the Dead.
Oh, snap. What?
Dead serious.
Wait.
When we're
Wait.
talking books, let me grab them. Hold up. All right. So I realized I got excited and just disappeared. So these two right there.
Yeah.
I was in Chicago on a project, working for a yeah, okay, so working for a hospital, and these two books were they physically incarnated themselves into my life after and following this experience with the Emerald Tablets, whereby the path to get home was made available again.
Hmm.
So journeying down and coming back up, these are the two things that I've had, and that's the Tibetan Book of the Dead. I'll be honest, I haven't been able to crack. Um, I've opened it and I've attempted it multiple times. It's a daunting thing.
Mm-hmm.
I am not ready yet. But it's there.
Yeah, yeah. It's wild to me yet that you came back with the Bhagavad Gita because I have a lot of theories, right? Um, but it's often said by members of the of ISKCON, commonly called the Hare Krishnas, that Lord Yamaraj, or who we call Death, he will be like the Lord of the underworld. So I guess like Hades, or in that kind of vein.
Yeah,
Uh,
very familiar.
he's the only one that, well, not the only one. He has a copy of a lot of the books that people hold on high regard. Bhagavad Gita being one, Srimad Bhagavatam, and then they say also, there's no way to test this unless you die, right? I guess, but he has other books down there with him, down there, over there. I guess it's all relative. He has on that realm. He has other books as well that you can only get there. So when you said that you came back from a Menti with two books of the dead, essentially, the Bhagavad Gita, of course, isn't
Yeah,
a,
but
yeah,
I mean, it's a book of basically. Yeah, I mean,
yeah. It depends how you look at it, right?
right, fair, fair.
Depends how you look at it. So yeah, that's a combination to come back with, and of course, now you start to delve into like protections in the hereafter, which we know were pretty big
Mm-hmm.
in what is called Egypt. They were so big on protections they even protected their where they would be buried. So, you know, I think the whole idea of protections, I don't think it really stops. I think if you're not considering, if you're a magical practitioner, or if you're not a magical practitioner, but you hear this, you should probably at least learn some magical defense, because you're not hearing this for on coincidence. You need some magical protections in your life.
Listen to this master magician.
Yeah.
And that is meant in the most intentful space. Coincidence does not exist. This video, when this video has found you, listen, go back, listen, shut your mouth, open your ear, still your mind, because there's purpose for this in your life. No, do we know? Fact, no, you do know, and you have the ability to take and apply that how it needs to be, so that you have the keys to the underworld, so that you can find that road less traveled.
Indeed. The road less traveled.
Brother Soul, as we're coming to this point, how would you like to send off our digital family in the state?
Well, if they haven't done it already, go ahead and commit to being able to sit for 15 minutes without moving. Once you're able to do it for a week, then you move on to the next thing. Um, you want to be mindful of what you say, because you know, sometimes we put magic in the air that bites us back, so we have to be careful of that.
A fucking man.
But definitely laugh more in your life if you're not just because it's a good protection, but I once heard it said that if you're not laughing, you're not living. Go ahead and laugh a bit.
Amen.
Let crying take care of itself. That's going to happen, but definitely make a concerted effort to laugh.
Crying is inevitable. Laughing is intentional. Make it so, make it be. So thank you for this time. Bless you, and I look forward to the next opportunity in chat that we have.
Absolutely. I appreciate you. Take care.
Bye, brother. You know, that is a mutual, as a
You muted out again.
I'm on now. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, well, wonderful. We'll leave that little technical blip in to clarify that I really need Soul's help, not only as an IT expert, but in vast many areas.